public entry-style intro. I want to thank you for being here today. I believe you didn't come by accident. I believe something is about to shift in your life. You may be looking at your current situation and thinking, this is all there is. But I'm here to tell you, what you see is not all there is. There's something bigger in front of you. There's more inside of you. God didn't bring you this far to leave you stuck in a life. You may be surrounded by limitations, but you are not defined by them. You have the power to rise above what is and walk boldly toward what can be. You may have been told, hey, this is just how it's going to be. But I want to remind you, you are not subject to your circumstances. You are not locked into your surroundings. You were created with vision, purpose, and creative power. And today is the day you start creating the life you want. Not by focusing on what is, but by believing in what's coming. Let's talk today on the message, ignore what is, create what you want. And here are 6 key principles to help you live it. What you focus on grows. That's not just a phrase for a vision board. It's a truth that governs every area of your life. If you keep feeding, fear grows. If you keep watering disappointment, it gets stronger roots. But if you decide to shift your attention to lean into hope, to look for the good, even when you're surrounded by the bad, you're going to start. Your focus is like sunlight. Whatever you shine it on will begin to grow. That's why it's so important not to waste your energy replaying what went wrong, who walked away, or how long it's taken. Your focus is precious. Don't give it to things that can't grow you. So many people stay stuck in what is because they never take their eyes off it. They constantly talk about the problem, think about the problem, text their friends about the problem, pray about the problem, but never take a moment to look beyond it. They stay locked in the room of their current reality and wonder why they never step into a new season. It's not because they aren't capable. It's not because they don't deserve more. It's simply because they never shifted their focus. You can't create what you want if all you ever do is study what you don't want. When a gardener wants to grow something, they don't go around pulling weeds all day long and never plant any seeds. They know they have to make room in the soil. Yes, but then they've got to plant what they want to see grow. Your mind works the same way. You've got to remove the thoughts that choke your growth, but you can't stop there. You got to plant words of faith. You've got to plant vision. You've got to speak where you're going, not just mourn where you've been. If you focus on the betrayal, it grows bitterness. If you focus on the pain, it multiplies pressure. If you focus on the failure, it magnifies your fears. But if you say, this is not where my story ends, then what starts to grow in you is determination. What starts to rise in you is faith. You begin to live out of the garden of your hope rather than the wilderness of your worry. This isn't about ignoring reality. This is about refusing to let reality have the final say isn't all there is. Just because something is true in the moment doesn't mean it's the truth about your destiny. You might not have the job yet. That's true. You might be dealing with loss. That's true. But the truth is you're still called. Truth is you're still chosen. The truth is you're still full of potential and there is more ahead of you than behind you. If you keep focusing on the truth of your calling instead of the facts of your struggle, you're going to grow into your next season. You can't plant a dream in the soil of doubt and expect it to thrive. You can't grow vision while focusing on all the reasons it won't happen. That's like trying to bake a cake and staring at all the ingredients you don't have. No, you've got to use what's already in your hand. You've got to get intentional about where you let your eyes land. Every time you catch yourself rehearsing the problem, redirect your focus to the promise. Say, I may not be there yet, but I'm on my way. I may not feel it yet, but I believe it's coming. I may not see it yet, but I trust it's working. Think of it this way. Your attention is like currency. Whatever you spend it on increases in value. If you constantly pay attention to negativity, it's going to get louder in your life. If you keep paying attention to the voice that says, "You're not enough," eventually you'll start to believe it. But if you start investing your attention in things that lift you, in words that align with your purpose and thoughts that energize your soul, you'll begin to notice momentum. Peace will grow. Strength will grow. Confidence will grow. This applies to relationships too. If you're always focusing on what people aren't doing, you'll miss what they are doing. If you're constantly thinking about who left, you won't notice who stayed. What you focus on grows. So if you want more love, focus on love. If you want more peace, focus on peace. If you want more opportunities, start noticing the ones you already have, no matter how small. Gratitude is one of the most powerful forms of focus. When you give your attention to what's working, more things start to work. It's also true with your self-talk. If you're constantly reminding yourself of where you failed, you're going to live small. But if you start focusing on how far you've come, how much you've survived, how resilient you've become, your courage will begin to bloom again. Stop fixating on what's missing and start focusing on what's possible. You have survived every single worst day of your life so far. That's proof of strength, proof of purpose. That's proof that what you choose to focus on has the power to change your direction. You may not be able to control everything around you, but you can control what you focus on. And once you shift that, once you stop magnifying the problem and start magnifying the promise, that's when transformation begins. That's when creativity awakens. That's when the impossible becomes possible. Because what you focus on grows. Faith speaks what it hopes for and not what it sees. That means you don't have to wait for the breakthrough before you speak like you already have it. You don't have to see the door open before you begin to walk in expectation. Faith doesn't wait for the evidence to show up before it begins to speak. It declares, "I'm healed," while still feeling the symptoms. It says, "I'm free," while the chains are still rattling. It proclaims, "I'm going higher," even when life feels like it's falling apart. That's what separates people who live by faith from those who live by sight. Because if you only ever speak what you see, then you'll stay stuck in what is. You'll keep repeating the same struggle, reinforcing the same reality, and recycling the same limitation. But when you begin to speak what you hope for, when your words match your destiny, not your difficulty, things start to shift. Your language begins to lead your life. Your mouth starts to create momentum. It's not about pretending. It's about prophesying. It's not about being blind to the facts. It's about being loyal to the promise. That's what faith does. It aligns your words with your future, not your frustration. Faith doesn't deny the mountain. It just speaks to it. Faith doesn't ignore the valley. It just declares that even in the valley, purpose is still unfolding. Faith doesn't wait for all the conditions to be perfect. It opens its mouth in the middle of the storm and says, "Peace is coming." It looks at an empty field and says, "The harvest is on the way." You've got to be bold with your words. The scripture says, "I'll let the weak say, I am strong." Notice it doesn't say, "Let the weak say, I hope I'll get stronger one day." It doesn't say, "I'll let the weak say, I'm tired." No, it says, "Speak strength even when you don't feel it." Declare abundance even when you're surrounded by lack. Say, "I'm rising," even when life feels like it's pushing you down. Because faith isn't waiting for confirmation. Faith is the confirmation. The problem for many people is they're fluent in what they see, but silent about what they hope for. They can give you a full report on what's wrong. They can explain all the reasons it hasn't happened yet. They can recite the rejection, the statistics, the struggles, but they've lost their confession. They've forgotten how to say, I'm still believing. They've stopped saying, it's still mine. But friend, you've got to get your voice back. You've got to reclaim your declaration. Think about it. Creation started with words. Oh. She didn't wait for light to show up before he said it. He spoke it into existence. That's the pattern we've been given. Your words are not just sounds. Seeds. Every time you speak in faith, you're planting something in your future. Every time you're pulling your life in the direction of promise. You can't afford to stay silent when everything around you looks opposite of what you're believing for. That's when you need your words the most. When all you see is sickness, speak health. When all you see is lack, speak overflow. When all you see is confusion, speak clarity. When all you see is delay, speak divine timing. You've got to learn how to let your mouth go ahead of your eyes. You've got to let your faith take the lead, and your feelings will catch up later. Maybe you've been in a season where you've stopped saying what you hoped for because it didn't happen the last time. Maybe disappointment silenced you. Maybe delay made you doubt. But today is the day to start speaking again, even if it's in a whisper, even if it feels unnatural. Faith isn't about how loud you are, it's about how loyal you are to the vision. Open your mouth and say, I'm still on my way. Say, doors are opening. Say, this is not how my story ends. Because if you'll start speaking it, you'll start seeing it. There's power in your declaration. Every time you speak life, angels move. Every time you declare favor, heaven aligns. Your words create the atmosphere you walk into. So what kind of atmosphere are you preparing with your language? Is it one of fear or faith? Is it one of defeat or destiny? The answer is in what you've been saying. It's time to become intentional with your language. Speak like the answer is already yours. Walk through the house saying, my family is blessed. Drive to the job interview saying, I'm favored and chosen. In the mirror and say, I'm equipped, empowered, and becoming. Because even if what you see doesn't agree with what you're saying, eventually your words will catch up and bring your reality into alignment. Faith speaks what it hopes for, not what it sees. When you live that way, you're not just reacting to life, you're creating it. You're not just surviving the current, steering the course. Your words are not powerless, they are prophetic. That's not just a phrase for spiritual comfort. It's a declaration of how you live, how you think, and how you respond to life's challenges. The natural says, it's impossible. The supernatural whispers, it's already done. The natural says there's no way. But the supernatural makes a way where there was none. You have to make a decision deep in your spirit that you will not let what's visible cancel out what's promised. Sometimes what you're facing in the natural looks overwhelming. The bills are stacking up. The relationship is falling apart. The opportunity passed. The door closed. That's what the natural is screaming it's over. But just because it looks final doesn't mean it is. The supernatural isn't subject to the laws of man. It's not intimidated by statistics. It's not hindered by timing. The supernatural operates on faith, not facts. That means what seems finished in the natural can still flourish through the power of supernatural. If you keep agreeing with what's natural, you'll keep living in limitation. But when you start aligning your thoughts and your beliefs with the supernatural, you'll begin to experience breakthroughs that don't make sense on paper. That's when people will look at your life and say, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they came out of that. I don't know how they're still smiling, still standing, still building. And the answer is, You didn't let the natural define your outcome. You trusted in something greater. Too often we let what we see dictate what we believe. We let closed doors become our identity. We let bad reports become our forecast. We let delays define our destiny. But if you're going to walk in power, you've got to flip the order. You've got to let what you believe override what you see. You've got to let the word in you be louder than the world around you. Because if you always bow to the natural, you'll never rise in the supernatural. There are some things in your life that won't make sense until you stop looking at them with natural eyes. You might be in a season where you're wondering why it's so hard, why it's taking so long, why it feels like everything is going in reverse. But if you'll take a step back and view your life through a spiritual lens, you'll see that it's not falling apart, it's falling into place. The supernatural doesn't always look logical. It often starts with confusion and ends in clarity. It begins with nothing and ends with abundance. You weren't created to walk by sight alone. You were created to walk by faith. And faith doesn't wait for evidence. Faith believes while the answer is still invisible. Faith celebrates before the battle is over. Faith praises before the walls come down. So don't wait for the natural to change before you start living like it's done. Praise like the victory is already yours. Move like the answer is already delivered. Show up like you're already chosen. When David stood in front of Goliath, the natural said he didn't stand a chance. He was too small, too inexperienced, too unprepared. But David wasn't operating from the natural. He was moving in the supernatural. He knew he wasn't alone. He knew there was a force behind him, greater than what was in front of him. And with one stone and a whole lot of faith, he brought the giant down. That's what happens when you refuse to let the natural override the supernatural. The natural might say you don't have enough. You're not educated enough. You're not connected enough. But don't let that stop you. If God gave you the vision, He's already made provision. If He placed the dream in your heart, He's already cleared the path. It's happening. It may not feel like it, but things are shifting. You've just got to hold on to the supernatural when the natural tries to tell you it's over. You are not defined by your surroundings. You're not limited by your upbringing. You're not stuck in your current condition. That's what the natural says. But the supernatural says you're blessed. The supernatural says you're rising. The supernatural says you're healed, favored, restored, and equipped for more than you've ever imagined. There's another level of life waiting for you, but you'll never access it if you keep waiting for everything to make sense. You've got to be bold enough to believe in what you can't see. You've got to dare to speak in faith, move in faith, and stay in faith, even when the natural looks completely opposite. Maybe the odds are stacked against you. Maybe the facts don't look good. That's okay. The supernatural doesn't need permission from the natural to work in your favor. All it needs is your agreement. All it needs is your belief. And when you give that, when you choose to say, I believe anyway, you unlock the miraculous. So today, make that choice. When fear rises, choose faith. When logic says stop, choose obedience. When the voices around you say, be realistic, choose to be faithful. Keep believing, even when there's no sign. Keep trusting, even when the answer seems delayed. Keep speaking, even when the world is silent. That's how you live in the supernatural. Refuse to let the natural override supernatural. Because the natural may look like your reality, but the supernatural is your truth. What you imagine, you begin to manifest. That's not just a catchy phrase, it's a life principle. Your imagination isn't just a place for daydreams. It's the birthplace of destiny. It's where ideas are conceived, where visions are formed, where faith finds its shape. If you can't see it in your mind, it will be difficult to see it in your life. Every great invention, every breakthrough, every transformation began in someone's imagination. That's where it all starts, not on the outside, but within. What you imagine, you begin to manifest, because imagination is God's tool for painting the future before it becomes real. He puts a picture in your spirit before He places the miracle in your hands. He gives you the glimpse before He gives you the ground. You don't just stumble into success, healing, or breakthrough. You imagine your way there. You envision it so clearly that it begins to pull you forward. You speak it, you plan for it, you walk toward it, all because you've already seen it in your mind. Too many people let life steal their imagination. They stopped dreaming. They stopped envisioning the future. They're stuck in survival mode, just making it through the day. But you weren't created to just survive. You were created to see. You were made to imagine more. You were built to dream bigger. Imagination isn't just for artists and musicians. It's for builders, leaders, parents, anyone who wants to step into something greater than what currently exists. That's why the enemy loves to attack your mind. Because if he can limit your imagination, he can limit your life. If he can fill your mind with fear, doubt, and disappointment, he can keep you from ever reaching what's possible. But when you begin to imagine again, when you allow yourself to picture healing, to visualize freedom, to see yourself walking through new doors, starting new ventures, rising above every label, something powerful starts to shift. You're not just hoping anymore, you're seeing. And what you see internally, you start to move toward externally. The greatest breakthroughs in your life will be preceded by bold and apologetic imagination. Before the business is built, you have to imagine it thriving. You have to see yourself typing the final chapter. Before the relationship is restored, you have to see peace replacing the pain. It's in your imagination that the foundation is laid. That's where momentum begins. You won't walk into what you can't first see. It's about faith. Your imagination is the runway for your belief. It gives shape to what your heart knows is possible. It allows you to experience the future in advance. Not so you can get attached to a picture, but so you can become aligned with the direction. Because when you see it long enough, you begin to speak differently, act differently, move differently. You begin to prepare. You begin to expect. And that expectation becomes your magnet. You have to be careful what you allow into your imagination. If you constantly imagine worst-case scenarios, you'll live in anxiety. If you keep replaying past failures, you'll stay in shame. If you always see yourself stuck, unqualified, or broken, you'll never move forward with confidence. But if you start imagining what it feels like to be free, whole, and in purpose, you'll begin to live like it's already happening. Some people say, well, I'm just being realistic. But what they call realism is often just recycled disappointment. Just because it didn't happen before doesn't mean it can't happen now. Just because it took longer than you thought doesn't mean it's too late. You've got to give yourself permission to imagine again, to dream again, to walk through the doors in your mind before they ever open in real life. Even God uses imagination. The scriptures say He'll cause things that are not as though they were. That means He sees it before it exists, and then He speaks it into being. You carry that same power. When you begin to imagine possibilities, you're activating spiritual blueprint. You're beginning the process of manifestation. It doesn't mean everything will happen overnight, but it means something is starting. It means the seed is planted. And if you keep watering it with belief, action, and persistence, you'll start to see fruit. Some of the greatest miracles happened because someone dared to imagine differently. They refused to accept the current story as the final chapter. They saw the business thriving before the bank account showed it. They saw their body healed before the diagnosis changed. They saw their purpose unfolding even while walking through the fire. What separated them wasn't talent or background. It was imagination. They believed in something greater, and their minds started building what their spirit believed. So don't dismiss your imagination. Don't silence the dreams that won't go away. They're not a distraction. They're direction. What you imagine, you begin to manifest. That means today is not just about what's around you. It's about what's in you. You might not have the resources, connections, or clarity right now. But if you've got the vision, that's the starting point. Imagine it so clearly that it becomes more real than your current reality. And when that image in your heart becomes stronger than the image of your past, your present will begin to catch up with your promise. What you imagine, you begin to manifest. Let your desire be louder than your doubt. You can't silence every doubt that comes into your mind, but you can choose which voice you listen to. Doubt will whisper to you in every quiet moment. It will show up in the middle of progress and try to convince you you're not ready. It will tell you to slow down, to settle dreaming. But desire, the fire God placed in your heart, has a voice too. And if you'll learn to turn up the volume on your desire, you'll find the strength to move even in uncertainty. You weren't born to be ruled by hesitation. You weren't created to be governed by fear. Deep down, there's something you want, something your heart knows you were made for. It's that pull that won't leave you alone even after setbacks. It's the longing that stays lit even when you're tired. That's not a coincidence. That's not just emotion. That desire is divine. It's the evidence that your purpose is still active. But if you let doubt drown it out, you'll never make the move. Desire says, this dream matters. This doubt says, what if you fail? Desire says there's more in you. Doubt says you've already missed your chance. Desire reminds you of why you started, why you endured, why you stayed in the fight. Doubt tries to convince you to play small, to retreat, to wait until conditions are perfect. But nothing great. Great things are born in the tension between longing and limitation. The difference maker, which voice you decide to trust. People often think they need to get rid of all their doubts before they start. But the truth is, you'll always have doubts. The real question is, will you let your desire speak louder? Will you let your why be stronger than your what? Will you let your passion be more persistent than your fear? The louder your desire becomes, the more courage you'll find. It won't always cancel the fear, but it will help you keep moving in spite of it. Think of a rocket launching into space. It doesn't wait for silence. It takes off despite the shaking, despite the friction, despite the resistance. And once it gets high enough, the noise falls away. The same is true in your life. When you push past the noise of doubt, when you let your desire, eventually the resistance weakens and you rise into clarity. Let your desire become your focus. Write it down. Speak it daily. Remind yourself why you're building, why you're believing, why you're still standing. That dream is not random. It's rooted in something eternal. There's a reason you care so deeply. There's a reason it matters to you even when you try to ignore it. That's desire refusing to die. That's purpose keeping you alive on the inside. Desire doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's a whisper. Sometimes it's a picture in your heart, a quiet ache, a moment where you see yourself in a better place. Don't dismiss those glimpses. Don't ignore the vision. When you feed your desire with faith and action, it starts to grow. And the bigger it grows, the smaller your doubt begins to feel. Desire expands your belief. It stretches your imagination. It reminds you that you were born for more than fear. Maybe you've been taught to be realistic, to stay within the lines, to play it safe. But playing it safe never activated destiny. Playing it safe never changed the world. Playing it safe never gave birth to bold living. Your desire was never meant to stay caged. You're not supposed to tone it down to make others comfortable. You're not supposed to shrink it to match your past. Your desire is the fuel that moves you from where you are to where you belong. And yes, the closer you get to stepping out, the louder the doubts can get. That's normal, that's expected, but the key is to keep moving anyway. The fear of failure will never fully go away, but neither will the craving to create something that matters. So choose to listen to the voice that lifts you. Let your desire keep speaking, louder and clearer, until the fear can't stop you anymore. The world needs what you carry. Someone's waiting on the book you haven't written. Someone's healing will come through the business you've been afraid to start. Someone's inspiration is tied to your story. And you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing. Willing to let desire win. Willing to show up even when your hands are shaking. Willing to believe that the fire inside you is stronger than the doubts around you. Every dreamer, every builder, every world changer has battled. But they chose not to let it lead. They let desire be the compass. They let purpose be the guide. They took the first step even while fear was still in the room. And that's all you need to do. So the next time doubt comes knocking, don't give it the microphone. Hand it to your desire instead. Let the vision rise. Let your heart be louder than your hesitation. Because at the end of the day, it's not about whether you were afraid. It's about whether you moved anyway. Let your desire be louder than your doubt. Every setback is a setup for creativity. It might not feel like it in the moment. It might feel like loss, like failure. Like buried beneath that frustration is the seed of innovation. Behind the delay is a doorway to reinvention. Setbacks don't stop destiny, they awaken it. They force you to dig deeper, think wider, and reach further than you ever would have if everything had gone according to plan. Most people see setbacks as signs to quit. But those who rise, those who build lives that matter, they look at setbacks as divine redirection. They say, okay, this didn't work. Now what can I create? When the door closes, they don't sit in front of it, begging for it to open again. They turn around and look for a window. They shift. They stretch. They find another way. And more often than not, that other way is even better than what they originally imagined. You see, when everything is going smoothly, you don't really need creativity. You don't question systems. You don't rethink your strategy. You just go with the flow. But when things fall apart, when the support falls through, when the timeline gets disrupted, when the opportunity disappears, that's when something awakens inside of you. That's when you start to think differently. You stop relying on convenience and start leaning into innovation. You tap into ideas you never would have reached otherwise. Think about it. Some of the most powerful businesses, books, ministries, and movements were born out of setbacks. People lost jobs and discovered their calling. People were rejected and found their voice. People were denied and created their own platform. Setbacks made them realize they didn't have to wait for permission to show up. They had the power to create something new. The closed door didn't disqualify them. It redirected them towards something greater. Sometimes the very thing that feels like a breakdown is actually a breakthrough in disguise. You thought it was over, but it was actually beginning. You thought it was a dead end, but it was just a detour to something richer, deeper, more aligned with who you really are. That setback wasn't meant to break you. It was meant to build you. It was placed there to develop you. You was part of the process. You learn more from what doesn't work than what doesn't work than what does. When something goes wrong, your mind goes to work. You get creative. You adjust your thinking. You discover strength you didn't know you had. You're forced to get resourceful. You build muscles of endurance, flexibility, and persistence. And all of that becomes the foundation for the next level of your journey. So if you've been facing setback after setback, don't assume it means you're being punished. Don't assume it's all fallen apart. You might just be standing in the middle of divine preparation. You might be in the exact place where your greatest work is being formed. You might be discovering your next idea, the one that's going to move you forward, like never before. What if the rejection wasn't a loss, but a lesson? What if the closed door wasn't denial, but direction? What if the silence wasn't absence, but an invitation to create something new from nothing? That's how creativity is born. Not in comfort, but in challenge. Even when Jesus was crucified, what looked like the ultimate setback was actually the greatest setup in history. From pain came power. From loss came life. If God can turn the cross into a crown, He can certainly turn your setback into strategy. But you've got to be willing to look at it with new eyes. You've got to say, this may not be what I want, but what can I make of it? But what can I make of it? Some people get stuck replaying the setback over and over in their mind. They camp out in disappointment. They let frustration become their focus. But if you can shift your attention, if you can start asking creative questions like, what can I build here? What haven't I tried? What else is possible? Then you move from victim to visionary. You stop asking, why me? And start declaring, watch me. Creativity isn't about having all the answers. It's about being bold enough to search for new ones. It's about refusing to let the last chapter define the next one. It's about turning limitations into invitation. Invitations to rise, to build, to reimagine. The most powerful creations come from the people who refuse to let pain be the period at the end of their sentence. Instead, they make it the comma and keep writing. You may be in a season right now that doesn't make sense. Maybe it feels like everything you were building has been knocked down. But friend, that pile of rubble might just be the raw material for something better than you ever dreamed. Don't be afraid to start again. Don't be ashamed to pivot. Don't let pride keep you from creating something fresh out of what fell apart. You are not empty. You are full of ideas waiting to be activated. You are not finished. You are being formed. You are not failing. You are being equipped. So take the setback, lift your head, and start building again. Because this isn't the end. It's the setup. You may be looking at your life right now and seeing a mountain of impossibility. You may feel surrounded by delay, by limitations, by circumstances that scream, this is all there is. But let me remind you, this is not all there is. There is more. There is greater. There is another level. You don't have to settle for what is when you've been created to build what can be. You are not here to be defined by your current conditions. You are here to transform them. You carry power, purpose, and potential that's bigger than any obstacle in front of you. And the key to unlocking it all is this. Stop giving so much energy to what is and start creating what you want. Shift your focus. Speak faith, not fear. Trust what you can't see. Imagine bold. Let your desire drown out your doubts. And when things fall apart, don't panic. Get creative. Don't let the noise around you silence the voice within you. Don't let what the world says is realistic keep you from doing the miraculous. You were never meant to just observe life. You were meant to shape it. You were never called to echo limitations. You were born to express vision. Everything you need to rise is already inside you. The moment you stop agreeing with what is and start believing in what can be, That's the moment momentum begins. There will always be reasons to stay stuck. Always be excuses to delay. But you don't have to accept a life that's smaller than your calling. Smaller than your calling. You don't have to keep replaying the same chapter. You don't have to live limited by the natural when the supernatural is on your side. This is your time to flip the script, to silence the doubt, fuel the desire, and build the future your heart keeps envisioning. So today, make the decision, not just once, but daily. Ignore what is. Create what you want. Not in your strength alone, but with heaven backing you. Not by chance, but by faith. Speak it, imagine it. Move toward it, and watch how everything begins to shift in your